Hi, everyone. I'm here with Beth, and Beth is actually my second interview from the UK. So Beth has been going to Skin Solace, and she'll share her story with us. But she's also, small business owner. She hustles. She works super hard, and I'm just really excited to meet with her. And we had a few minutes to connect in advance of the interview, and I think you're really just going to love her story. So Beth, thanks for doing this with us. Emma was the first patient that I interviewed, and she was about 40 treatments in. And so she's come a seriously long way, and she shared her story with us. And now I'm so thrilled to hear about someone else from the UK that's going to share their story. So, Beth, with that, I just want to say, if you could just jump right in and tell us a little bit about your eczema and your topical steroid withdrawal story, and now how long you've been using CAP. So, with that.
Sure. Oh, it's so nice to talk about it, and it's so nice to meet you. Yeah, so I had kind of on and off eczema all my life, certainly as a kid, then it went away a bit, then it came back as a teenager. And then when I was 18, I think they actually waited until I was an adult. They then gave me the steroid cream. Um, and I remember just being like, oh my God, this is so good. Why have I never had this before? Look how beautiful I look. And I used it from about 18 to 31. So yeah, that's about 13 years. And I used it generally on my face under my makeup, and the backs of my knees, like all of my kind of my creases, backs of my knees and my elbows. And then I had a scalp treatment as well that was a steroid. And I remember being obsessed with it and thinking it was the best thing ever. And then at about 28, it stopped working. So 10 years later, that's when I first started thinking something weird's going on, but I kind of ignored it. I was reading about topical steroid withdrawal, being like, it's not me, it's not me, it's fine. And then for about 2 years, I kept going, trying to cut down, but I kept going, kept using it. And then I started to get the facial rashes where it goes around your nose, like, it follows the blood vessels. And I was like, okay,
Reverse Rudolph, they call it.
yeah, yeah. And then I was like, okay, so no, this definitely is what I'm going through. So then I stopped all creams in March of 2021. And I battled through the first year by myself because the first few months were really bad. And then it actually got better.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, oh, I'm fine. And then I got COVID, and just hit for six. And then everything went crazy. So I'm like, that's interesting. It seems very immunity linked for me. So then that must have been Christmas 2022 that I had COVID, and things went really downhill after that. And by April, I was like hospitalized for anaphylactic reactions. I was so allergic, and I was just like puffy and swollen, living in Sudocrem everywhere, and bandages everywhere. Trying to do my masters at the time, and just showing up for uni in bandages. It wasn't a great look. And then after I got hospitalized, uni were like, "You can't come back. You're too sick," and I was too sick to study. Oh, it was a bad time, and that's when I was googling and I found the clinic. This is like a whistle stop tour, but tell me if I'm talking too much. Yeah, and then I messaged them, and they said, "Yeah, fine, we'll do a assessment online. We'll talk through your symptoms and have a little look close up at your skin." And then Jing did the body map where she drew kind of circles over what I'd need and where, and said basically you need to stop your pseudocrem, which was like telling me to come off crack. I was like, no, no. At which point I stopped with an appointment in a month's time. So there was only a month waiting list, and that was because it was kind of a different point for the clinic. So I stopped for a month. Oh my God, my skin just fell off. Like I stopped my creams, and then I dried out, and then it was just coming off. Like I was cut. I was just all the tiny cuts. I didn't look, some people I think look more like they've been burned, like a real kind of burn look. I didn't look burnt. I just looked like the skin barrier was just completely broken. And it was all of my legs and all of my arms and chest, and my face was just red. Um, so that was how I showed up to the clinic in July of 2022. Um, yeah, so that pretty
Okay.
much brings us to there.
Thank you. Can you just, before we talk about your experience at the clinic, can you tell us what type of steroids you were using, your potency, and
Yeah, do you know what? I've always tried to figure it out. I still haven't managed to get my medical notes. It's a very hard thing to do in the UK, weirdly. I'm still trying so I can see exactly what I was on when. I know that I was on Betnovate, and I know that I was on Humavate, and I know that it wasn't the most potent. I've tried to look at the classes. Again, difficult. And I've tried to figure out in which, because I think there are four classes from what I've seen. And I've been trying to figure out. So I think I'm in the second from top.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think. I think. I don't really know, but yeah, Betnovate and Humavate were the main ones.
Okay, I don't know where they sit on the potency chart, but just a reminder for everybody, one being the highest potency, seven being the
Oh, there are
lowest. So
seven. Okay.
yeah. I also want to say, I come at this from over 30 years of steroid usage. And so when I
Hmm.
heard you say 10, I don't want to say you're lucky because it's
Yeah.
not, but it is, I think that the duration, the amount of steroids used, the potency used is really a trigger for how long you're going to be in TSW. And so,
Yeah.
that's something to be mindful of. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. And there's a whole spectrum. Like you see people being like, I was on it for 2 years. And I'm like, I know that 2 years feels a long time, but actually, you've got someone who's been on it for 50 that I was kind of thinking about the other day. And it's just, I think it was an interesting choice and a bit of a blessing that they never gave them to me under 18. It was a real shift in care that I got when I was suddenly in adult services rather than being treated as a kid,
Yeah,
um, which I think is actually a bit of a blessing. I
it
don't know.
is.
I talked to my mum, though, being like, did they ever give me those creams? And she just couldn't remember. She was just very trusting of the doctors, as you would be, and couldn't really remember what I was given when I was a kid.
Yeah. So talk to me about, you wait a month, your skin's
Yeah.
falling off, described, which was really interesting sort of way to say it, and I completely relate.
Mm.
Get to the clinic. What do you feel? What do you learn about your case? Tell me about your time with Jing and Louise, because even before we started this interview, you spoke very highly of them, and so I just want to hear your experience on day
Yeah.
one. Ground.
So I think we came at this. So I live with my fiance. We got engaged just after I stopped steroids, and we have now set a date for the wedding because my skin is going to be good enough, I hope. So that's happening next year. But yeah, so I live with my fiance, and we both, we were looking at the clinic and we were reading the FAQs and doing my research. And we both kind of decided, okay, this is this at cold atmospheric plasma. It couldn't sound more out there if it tried. And maybe it's snake oil, right? Maybe it's bollocks. But at least it will be bollocks from people who know what you're going through. Because I took my partner to a doctor's appointment, the last doctor's appointment I had about my skin, because I just don't go anymore. And he sat there and he listened to them dismiss it and say that I was in an eczema flare and asked me to take steroids and asked me to take paraffin moisturizers and everything and wet wrap myself with steroids on. And I was like, you're like, I can't, you're not hearing me. I'm very sick and you're not hearing me. So we came away just like devastated from that doctor's appointment, which I've been going to forever. But to have an impartial person, he's not impartial, he's my partner, but to have a person go, oh my God, they just didn't listen and go, yeah, I know. So he was very encouraging of me to go because he was like, at least you can just talk to some people. Okay. Like we're in a bad way. I was signed off work. I was signed off my master's. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't really getting up. I was pretty much bedbound by then. And he was devastated, obviously. And he was like, just go and see. Yes, it's a 5 hour, it was like a 4 hour train ride down there. And I had like an hour to see them and then a 4 hour train ride home. So I was like, okay, it's a whole day. I was so weak by then. It was a really exhausting thing to do. But I went by myself. I was like, I'm gonna do this by myself. Um, and it was the really early days of the clinic when it wasn't in its building that it's in now, which is all very official and clinicky. It was much more kind of the beginning of things where it was down a little, I had to get like a train to the middle of nowhere and then a taxi from the train to this house in like the back streets. And yeah, I showed up and I love meeting people anyway. I'm kind of always up for the adventure. But I do remember showing up and being like, oh, okay, I don't really care if this works or not because everyone's so nice. Like, obviously, I care if it works, but it's been worth it just to have exactly what we said time to talk to people who believe you. a nurse. I met a nurse on that day one who was lovely and just really sweet. And everyone was really nice. And everyone was kind of like, okay, so let's let's do it. Let's kind of, I'll talk you through the treatment rooms. Let's figure out how this is going to work. We did a full like paperwork assessment, where we really talked about allergens and triggers, which I hadn't wasn't on my radar at all then, which actually turned out to be massive. Yeah, and then had my kind of first, I think I was having 50-minute treatments maybe then, I think. And it was not the torso, like not the trunk, but everywhere else. So full arms, legs, and not my back. Full arms, legs, neck, face, kind of as much as the scalp as we could get to, that kind of thing. And and we decided it was going to be 50 minutes. And we decided it was going to be every week. So I calculated, costs. And I was so fortunate that I had my savings. I mean, I'm resentful about the fact that I had to spend my savings on this, but I'm also like, I've been self-employed my whole life, and to have been self-employed successfully enough to have a little cushion of money that I can spend on my health. Actually, it's taken me a while to get to a place of zen about it, but I was so fortunate. I feel, yeah, really, really lucky that I was able to do that. And then, yeah, started from there. So we knew we were going to do every week.
I want to interrupt you and ask you, for all those people that are struggling because they're like, we need to do a GoFundMe, we need to figure out how to do this. What do you say to them, and what do you say to the NHS?
So interestingly, I'm studying my master's that I took a break from and have now gone back to. I'm training to be an allied health professional. I'm training to be a speech and language therapist. So I am learning about the NHS from the inside out all of a sudden. Whereas I've always been from the outside looking in, being like, why is this so broken? Why doesn't this work for people with chronic health conditions? Because I think it's brilliant at acute care, and I think it's brilliant at cancer care, for example. I think the NHS does some things really right. And for me, the problems with the NHS are not the NHS. They are a Tory government, formerly Labour government issue of underfunding a system that benefits the poor more than it benefits the rich. And we have a government who wants to benefit the rich more than they want to benefit the poor, essentially, to break it down. And I won't get too political about it, but I think the issue with the NHS is that they are fully reliant on evidence-based practice, right? It is the bloodline, don't know what the phrase is, of the whole system, right? It's what they base everything on. They are obsessed with evidence. And I get it, because you need evidence-based care to know that you're giving the right treatments to the right people at the right time in the right way. But in doing so, you're very dismissive of new practice. It's very closed-minded, very arrogant of things that you don't have an evidence base for. And an evidence base can only be based on research that is funded. Research is only going to be funded by people who view it to be worthwhile. It's a capitalist issue. So CAP isn't going to get funding until people know that it's going to work, and it's not going to work until it gets funded. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a real catch-22. So people are sitting here needing it on the NHS. That's not going to happen, I don't think. Depressingly, maybe I'll be wrong. I would love to be proved wrong, and maybe the research will be done. But until then, this feels like it's going to need to be a privately funded thing, which then puts people in the situation of, I need thousands of pounds, because you do need thousands of pounds, because you can't have one CAP treatment and be like, bing, I'm done. It's a slow process. It's about cell growth. It's about holistic, whole body change and growth. And it takes time. And I think time and patience is something, we're traumatized people, right? We've been through massive health crises. And it's hard to be patient. It's impossible to be patient for some people. Oh, how are you doing? Are you still there? Your internet's gone funny.
I'm very much here. It's just a
Oh, good,
challenge.
fine. Ah, cool. If you can hear me, that's fine. But yeah, so people who are relying on GoFundMe's, which was also something that I toyed with. I find it. I would. It's my own stuff, but I would have found it very hard, I think, to not fund it myself, to have asked for help from people. But I wish that wasn't how I felt, because I think it's such a valid thing to spend your money on. it's the biggest investment that you can make in yourself, but it's so hard to have to turn around and ask for money from strangers, from people who love you, whatever, for your health. It For me, it felt um I don't know, it shouldn't have felt like a luxury, but it did. I don't know. It's complicated. I think it's really complicated funding it. And I think that if you're looking down the kind of course of, right, I need X amount from GoFundMe, figuring out that this isn't a luxury, that this is absolutely a priority and something that will work, but that you need help to do is going to be step one.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to your prognosis, or like a general, like how many treatments in are you now? What
Yeah.
and the
Um,
reason about your future state? How do you feel? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I had because I kind of was quite keen to get my life back on track. I always thought like, okay, I'm going to do this from the July for as long as it takes, but I'm really hoping to be back at uni the following April, which is when I stopped. So I had to take a year out. So that gave me a time thing, which was right, July 22 to April 23. Maybe I don't think I had it this planned in my head, but maybe we'll see how we go. And actually that's how it panned out. I ended up having I think 24 treatments. I'm happy to share my before and afters with you as well, where I've got like you have a little picture in the background saying what number treatment you're on. And I think I had 24, and I went every week, and then I dropped down to every two, and then following Christmas I was down to every month. And for the last 4 months I just did monthly top ups until April. And then I was like, do you know what? I'm not done. I could have had more for sure, especially with the thick skin. It's the hardened skin that takes the longest. And I could have had more for sure. Um, but I didn't. I just bought 3 bundles maybe, because I worked it out in a certain way where I bought bundles. So I had my hourly count. And then within that time, we were also dropping down. I wasn't having 50 minutes anymore. Um, I was down to 30 minutes because I've decided my feet didn't need it anymore. My feet were fine. Like, I was looking for functional. I was not looking for perfect. And I think that that is quite an important differentiation. And as soon as I could function, and I had an amazing support system, like I think my partner has been everything through this. Like, just kind of, had I been single, I think I would have found this completely different. I think I would have been striving for perfect because I would have had to have gone dating or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's different when you feel like, okay, I'm comfortable in who I am.
Beth, I know what you mean. I feel like I need to get through this before I can even
I
meet
know,
someone.
and it's so sad because it shouldn't be the way, but I can fully understand that that's exactly how I would have been.
Because I don't want to feel like I'm burdening someone with this thing that I still need to get through, And I know
Yeah,
that's necessarily the right approach, because the right person will love you for what you bring to the table and who you are. But it's very hard to get past that first step.
I know. But you don't show up your most kind of finished, completed self, right? That's
No,
just never going to happen in any area of your life. It's not
always
like, oh,
healing.
my
Yeah.
career's done, so now I can date. And I view health to be the same. I haven't like completed my health journey, and therefore I'm allowed to experience other things. But I also, though, I completely
Yeah.
recognize what you're saying, because I know that at 28, when I discovered TSW, I was single and I was dating. And I was like, I am not dealing with this now. I was also dating not great people who didn't affirm me and my health, and who made me like, oh, you're scratching again, stop scratching, like that vibe. So that
Mm.
didn't help. But I know that that was a central shift between 28 when I first discovered TSW and 31 when I eventually came off the cream. I think
A
my
lot of
life had shifted a lot.
a lot of people I've interviewed that come to Bangkok with their partners or parent or something
Yeah,
remind everybody that you really do, when you're at your lowest point, need support. When I got to Bangkok, I couldn't extend my arms. I couldn't turn my neck because my hardened skin was so bad, and I didn't even know
yeah.
what hardened skin was. And so, I guess thank you to your fiance, but also, like, do you have anything that you want to share with people about how he's sort of helped you through this?
I think that point on safety, whatever that means to you, the psychological safety to be an ill person is something that I have not experienced in other relationships. I've not experienced it with all of my friends. I don't experience it with all of my family. It's not an expectation to hold just from someone who loves you. Do they also allow you to feel very safe in the very vulnerable space of being chronically sick? Because it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but figure out who those people are. And those are the ones you call, you text, you fly them to Bangkok, whatever. Those are the ones that you hold closest, because it was what I didn't know that I didn't have. And as soon as I had it, I suddenly had the strength to be like, okay, how can I process this differently? And it was a big deal.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you if there were other sort of snippets of info or knowledge that you wanted to bring to the table for other potential CAP users or just TSW patients.
Yeah, I think CAP, it was game changing and life saving for me. And I think that I went from, is this snake oil, to, oh my God, I don't know where I'd be now if I hadn't had it. So I'm a massive advocate of it. And I know that it's hard because it's not an evidence-based thing. So I get the skepticism and the worry, and do all the research you need, ask all the questions you need. But ultimately, I do really rate it. I really, really rate it. I think there's something, I'm surprised at how much of a psychological journey it's been for me, actually, like accepting that I'm very ill, or I was very sick and I'm still quite sick. Yeah, kind of understanding what chronic illness means and viewing this as much more of a holistic process, because CAP is just one part of skin thickening, of cell regeneration. It definitely helped internally and externally, but I'm still dealing with very sensitive to irritants, need to identify as someone, who is sick. If I need things. It's weird. I'm not explaining it very well, but it would be like if you had a nut allergy, but you were still like, oh, do you not know? I'm just going to sit in the room while people eat nuts. Like, don't even worry about it. You go ahead. Don't worry about me. Or being a person with a nut allergy is like, can you not open that packet of peanuts around me, please? Like, I now advocate for my health in a different way. And
Yeah,
whether that is,
you explain to people what you need, if
yeah,
your exposure is a thing, or you're going to that Airbnb, you talk to the host and explain, please run the cycle with hot water 5 times before I get there with the washer. Please don't use chemicals for a week in advance before I come. Has there been fresh paint in your apartment? Do you have new
yeah,
furniture? Like, you have to do your due diligence checks.
yeah,
Otherwise, you will be living in a state of despair.
discomfort. Yeah, well, despair, discomfort, even mild discomfort. Like, I feel like I've come on so far that my discomfort is not debilitating, but I still have to be like, but it's still worthy, right? It doesn't have to be debilitating for it to be something that you need to recognize about yourself and advocate for. Um, so there's been a massive psychological shift that's happened post CAP, which is really interesting.
I want to push you on that and say, isn't it a bit liberating though? Because you don't have the steroids masking that discomfort,
Yeah,
and you
it's
acknowledge it now. You're like, okay, trigger. I know. I got to look around and figure out what it is and deal.
yeah, because I've lived my life from a place of suppressing the symptom rather than from a place of treating the cause. And as soon as you start treating the cause, you get much more in touch with yourself. But I can't dye my hair. I miss hair dye so much. I can't wear the makeup I loved. I found new brands, just starting to find new brands and put makeup on again after 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Getting my nails done is like my favorite part of the whole journey. I religiously get my nails done, but it's the only kind of beauty thing that I do anymore. And there's parts of it I really miss. There's parts of it I really miss. But then I'm also like, God, I'm product free. I'm product free. Genuinely, I use seje and that's it. I'm like, God, I used to use so much stuff and I don't buy any stuff anymore. And I'm very natural.
Yeah.
But that's massive because you're breaking free of this system that's always kind of held you in place of like, how can you hide your flaws? And TSW makes you face your flaws in a way that is brutal.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
well, we use the steroids, of course, because we want to like not itch and for comfort, but it's also a vanity thing,
totally, totally beauty, totally aesthetic, and how you're judged. And skin still feels to me like a really, advertising's getting more inclusive, arguably, but it's trying to show different body types. I'm a plus size person. I love seeing plus size imagery in stuff. Like it makes me feel seen, but I still only really see clear skin. So
Yeah.
until skin is shown in a different way, how are you going to feel more seen? And I think that's just, you're up against a whole systemic beauty, gender thing. Like that's massive. That's massive.
Thank you for saying that. So I wanted to ask you one more question before we close out. When you flare now,
Mm-hmm.
so many treatments and after such a long period of time of being in TSW, what is a flare? What does it feel like? And how long
It's
does it,
in,
and
yeah,
how,
it's interesting because I've never had the flare cycles that I see in other people. I don't think I've never recognized it of I'm in a flare, it goes away, I'm in a flare, it goes away.
okay.
I notice when I'm around triggers. We very recently got an air purifier and it's been like a week less and it's been like game changing. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know I'm literally allergic to the air in my house. How helpful. I still have my dog, which was a controversial choice.
Ooh,
She's a whippet. She's a hypoallergenic dog, but I do wonder, would I be healthier without my dog? But I honestly don't care. I'm never getting rid of my dog. Um,
choice, choices
it
we
is
make
it is the choice we make. So my
and
flares,
informed choices.
yeah, right, yeah, fully. And my flares look like, so I still have like 4 a.m. I think something still goes on with my cortisol because 4 a.m. I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so itchy, and then it goes away. So I'm like,
Mm,
okay, there's something weird happening with my cortisol and my circadian rhythm still. Um, but that is the kind of thing that I deal with, or an irritant reaction. I don't really have flares in the same way that I have seen other people describe them. I don't think. I also think it's my cycle rather than its flares. I think I notice hormonally my skin really shifts at different points in my cycle.
yes, yes. I also observed that when I arrived on this trip, I was in my cycle, I had a cold, I was
Yeah, yeah.
long flight, but after 2 days of just sort of down tools, recovering from the cold, I bounced back. So
It's immunity, it's hormones. This is why we need the research, right? Like we just desperately need to understand from a whole body perspective. And back to your question about the NHS, they work on like there's a great sign in my doctors that just says one appointment, one symptom. And I'm like, that is the most closed-minded way to view medicine I've ever seen. Like you have to look at the whole body. You have to.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, this was so lovely. Do you, as we close out, any final remarks or concluding thoughts?
I feel like I've strayed massively off track. But I think it's been such an interesting journey. And I kind of am not flippant about the fact that it's been a massive battle and that mental health is huge. And if money was unlimited, I would be having CAP, I would be having therapy, I would be having cryo, I would be having red light, I would be having like all of this holistic treatment because I think it's the way forward, not obviously pharmaceutical treatment that I was having before. But I think taking care of yourself mentally is, the hardest part and one of the most important parts of the whole journey as well. So if you can start there and try and meet it with curiosity rather than self-hatred.
Oh, lovely. Well, Beth, with that, I think that's a great closing. Thank you for taking the time to do this, and thank you for sharing with everybody your journey. And I look forward to seeing your before and after, like after I can see you now, but your before photos so we can share them with others as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I will send them to you. Thank you so much. It's been so nice to talk through it.
Thank you. Okay, we can stop recording.
Great.